Hello, I've been meaning to make this video for a while because I think this is actually a really important thing. I find that a lot of people have commented on my videos that they are interested in doing the same kinds of videos that I do or similar. And I noticed that a lot of people, especially young people, are interested in doing commentary or video essay type YouTube channels and are curious about how it works in terms of making money. And that doesn't just go for people who are, under the age of 20, who are in school or whatever. It goes for people from all ages. And I think it's really important that people who work in a certain field and have had some success in it share their experiences with people and give a level of transparency. So over the past 4 or 5 months, I'd say, probably 4 months, I've made between $3,000 and $4,000 US a month off of YouTube. And what I've done is made about 2 YouTube videos per month. I've had this channel for over a year, but only really been posting regularly on it for less than a year, since last September. I'm recording this in July. And over that period of time, I really got lucky, but also I was able to notice certain things that worked for me in terms of how to get a video to get a lot of views and then how to monetize that. And a lot of those things are pretty self-explanatory, but I also think a lot of people are kind of discouraged or feel kind of weird about it. And when we are in a time period where the job market is so vicious and so many people are wondering how they can just find a way to make money because the economic system is broken and careers that you spend years and years studying for, like I did, I have a bachelor's in journalism, seem so screwed over by the industries that they are beholden to. You have to find different kind of crafty ways to make money, especially if you're a person who is creative, who has interesting or potentially interesting ideas about media or about politics or society, who has an interest in learning more about those things but doesn't really have an outlet for it or a way to justify it, and maybe feels kind of alone in that sense, or is finding a drought in terms of work that can pay them to do anything close to thinking about those things. YouTube is probably one of the primary ways that people are looking towards as a response. And I think that that makes sense, and there's a way you can do it well, but there's also a lot of things you have to keep in mind before you decide that this is something that you're going to pursue. So in this video, I'm going to sort of break down some of the most important things that I think about when it comes to how I make money off of YouTube and what kind of things I do with my videos and how I place it in my life, but also what kinds of things I do to try to prepare for a video, research for it, make the video, and then of course figure out whether it's going to be successful or not and do my best to make it so. But I want to do a couple of disclaimers first. Obviously, I'm not interested in doing some sort of hustle culture video or any kind of idea of this is the thing you have to do. If you're not succeeding in this work, you're not working hard enough. I'm not really that guy, and I would hope if you watch my channel, you kind of get that. I actually have a video about negative work culture, in particular time management. I'm not here to tell you that this YouTube thing is going to make you even the amount of money that I've made, which, look, if you stretch out $3,000 a month USD to 12 months in a year, that's $36K. That's not going to get anybody a house. But there's also a lot of people who have more views than I do. As a reference, YouTube pays about $3 or $4 per 1,000 views for AdSense placed YouTube videos. And so if you're getting like 1 million views per month off of just AdSense alone, you could potentially get $3, $4, even $5,000 a month, depending on how much ads you place, etc. How many ads you place, grammar. But you also have to understand that we're all kind of figuring this thing out because there's no set rules for it. If this was a meritocracy, then obviously a lot of things would look different on this website, and I'll leave it there. I'm certainly not somebody who's going to be a YouTube apologist or spread propaganda about how this is the career path that everybody should be pursuing. But you're going to have to work at something, and maybe this is the thing that you'll do. And that's why I feel like it's important to spread this information and give some ideas and tips or whatever. Not because it's, oh, I have the secrets to getting views, or because I'm trying to life coach you, or because I'm trying to act like hard work and understanding is the only thing that you need to get money in this world. That's not how it works. And a lot of things that happen on YouTube are even themselves just like confusing and unfair. That being said, yeah, there's a way you can make this into a career. But you also have to understand that in order to make this into a career, there are certain roadblocks that you'll have to be able to deal with that I was able to deal with because of my privilege, because of the position that I'm in. For instance, I live at home. I live with my mom. I am college educated. I didn't have to pay for a lot of anything going through school. I'm also abled, and basically every facility, I got some sort of neurodivergent thing going on, and I take Adderall for it, which is expensive in the US, and so YouTube has helped me afford that. But generally speaking, there's no significant physical roadblocks that I have to experience doing this. And of course, some people will say like, well, the way that you talk, or your talent, or your beautiful good looks are causing you to get all these views, which look, I know that there's something to be said about acknowledging pretty privilege and stuff like that, or like the way that you look being important towards the thumbnails and people watching your videos. That said, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm some sort of dead-on supermodel. I'm comfortable with the way I look, and I'm sure plenty of other YouTubers are too, but I'm also very aware that there's a lot of YouTubers who don't look like me, or maybe don't fit the conventional standard of beauty or whatever, and they get good views doing YouTube commentary too. A lot of them don't even show their face at any point, so there's that. But I'll make mention of those things just to communicate that I'm aware of these kinds of factors. In general, if you're not able to deal with months of posting YouTube videos without making money, even after doing hours and hours of hard work on YouTube videos, then it's probably never gonna work for you, because one of the things that you're almost certainly going to endure making a YouTube channel is the barren period of like not being able to get views, or not being able to monetize the views that you get, or not being sure who you are as a YouTuber in addition to that, and all the negative stuff that comes with that. And I actually have spent many years making YouTube videos and doing things in a variety of ways on YouTube and social media before landing on this YouTube channel being the way that I want to do things. So those are some of the cards of mine that are on the table. I also want to mention again that I use an editor for my videos. I commission a friend of mine, Danae, who I make mention of in many videos. I wouldn't be able to do these YouTube videos without an editor, because I don't enjoy editing. I never have. I've never felt like I have a knack for it or taken much to it. And I really prefer to just get in front of the camera, set my stuff up, record, and make sure also I have a script, which takes a long time to put together before doing that. But I'll do all these things. I'll even do some work with editing audio, and I can map out certain things that I want for the video. But if I didn't have somebody who I was friends with, who I was capable of working out a rate with, that I'm not going to disclose, that's up to her if she wants to disclose that, and that is clearly like extremely skilled and talented and creative, and also contributes a lot to the videos, to the point where I consider this our channel as a duo to at least some extent. Without her, this isn't happening. Without Danae, there's no Elliot on YouTube. Maybe there's another editor that comes around, but the point is, without an editor and without that kind of contribution, I would have a really, really difficult time getting anywhere near this level of success that I've had. I've almost hit 80K subscribers as of making this video, early July, so I'm really grateful. It's been a lot of growth over the past few months in a pretty rapid period of time. And again, I'm making a decent amount of money, more so from my standpoint, because I live at home and I've never really made this much money before. I'm 26. The jobs I've worked before have not necessarily paid very much. I've worked in food service. I've done a bunch of crap. But yeah, I'm happy, but I'm also aware that I'm lucky. I'm blessed, and there's certain things that I have been able to do in terms of things I can deal with that maybe you won't be able to deal with. Another thing is that I live in the United States, and most of my audience is from the US, as well as the UK and Canada. Things in other languages may be quite different in terms of how the algorithm works in other countries and the viewership. At the same time, like if you're an English language creator, you can possibly, most likely, get a lot of this same kind of response or success if you're in a different country, because I've seen it happen with other creators in different countries before. If you do content in a different language, then it's just a matter of surveying and researching what's successful in your language on YouTube, in your database, in your demographic on YouTube, and then seeing what you can potentially do with that, which we'll get into. I also want to say, in terms of the money that I get per month. I don't feel like I have to disclaim too much about what I do with my money, but I am saving money, I am paying bills, I am paying my editor, I am paying a few different things. So yeah, if all of that makes sense to you, then let's get into some talk about how to make money off of YouTube commentary videos and video essays, and hopefully this will be helpful. So ultimately the strategy when I came to it after having all these years of like not knowing what the hell I was doing is figuring out how to amass a lot of views, which like shocker, right? But basically doing so in a way where you're strategically making certain steps to give the YouTube algorithm what it wants. Now the YouTube algorithm is an enigma wrapped in a mystery or whatever the quote is. We only generally know that it's feeding people what they want, kind of, because it gives people what they're clicking on, like similar related content, which it measures based on what people click on after they click on the videos that you watch. So if you watch a bunch of Tiffany Ferg videos, you'll possibly get Mina Lee videos, you'll possibly get Madison Brown videos or my videos. And obviously, as I previously mentioned, views will get you literally paid once you become a YouTube partner, which is kind of a process. You have to get a certain amount of subscribers, you have to upload a certain amount of hours of footage, I believe. Once you get past that point and you become a partner, you upload your tax info and everything, which yeah, it's not super hard, but you do have to wait a long time for a PIN code sometimes. Point being, once you get to that part and you're a partner and you start putting ads in your videos, that's how you get your money. That's one of your main sources of income is AdSense. It's the most direct way to make money off of YouTube videos. Now, I also have an agency that reached out to me after one of my videos had a lot of views, the Gen Z is Traumatized video, and they work with me to get sponsorships, which is another important form of payment that works for my channel, where I work with a company that wants to sponsor my videos. They pay me a certain amount of money and I give them a certain placement integration. You guys kind of know how that works, so I don't really feel like I have to get into too much detail about it, and I hope that that doesn't compromise my position at all talking about it in that way. But you know, it's just how it works. Generally, ultimately, the key is you got to get views. And that's something that's very difficult, right? Because it's actually very complicated. But the big thing that the YouTube algorithm likes, as a lot of people will mention, is whether people are clicking on your video a lot, which is mostly based on your title and thumbnail, honestly, as well as like the content of the video in terms of what it's about in a lot of cases. And then also whether or not people are watching it to a large extent, like how much of the video are people watching, which can be for a lot of different reasons. Now that's where a lot of the Mr. Beast style editing stuff becomes this big point of conversation, because it's oriented towards continuously keeping the user, the viewer anyway, engaged in the content, continuously having them see big words and big things happening, and it's very bombastic, right? That's not the only way that you have to get consistent large amount of viewership. If you're speaking from a naive point of view, you could even say that it's just based on how good your video is. I would more word it as like, how well is your video working for your audience? Are the people who are clicking on your video finding that the video is meeting their interest or their demands or exceeding them? If that is the case, then you'll get that number, and then YouTube's algorithm will say, hey, 5% of people who had this thing recommended to them clicked on it and they watched a large amount of it. That's good. Let's keep recommending it to people who are watching similar videos to them. Boom. Now, a lot of you have different things that you might or might not want to talk about. I don't think there's so much of a barrier in terms of what you want to talk about as far as the specific topic. It's more so how you want to talk about it, which is a matter of first understanding that YouTube doesn't like a lot of cursing because of the advertisements that are placed on videos. If advertisers see a video has a lot of mature content in it, graphic content, a lot of talk about sex, a lot of talk about, you know, mature content stuff, and of course a lot of cussing, especially in the first few seconds of the video, then a certain age restriction will be put on the video, which makes it a lot harder to make money off of, because age restricted videos don't get recommended nearly as much. So the goal is to avoid age restriction and to also orient your titles and your thumbnails, as well as even sometimes the content itself, towards what is working with YouTube's algorithm. Like, what are people clicking on, watching, and enjoying? A great way to understand that is to look at what you are watching and enjoying, and noticing is getting a lot of other viewers, similar people who are watching and enjoying. And with that, then you can kind of imitate. You can kind of pick, okay, this is the kind of content I want to make, or at the very least, you can gain inspiration from that. But we can also break down some aspects that can make a video pop off, because that is your goal. Your goal is to make a video pop off and then do it again, hopefully. The more consistently you do it, the more views you'll get, obviously, and the more revenue you'll get from the views. So if you're a person who looks at YouTube and says, like, I just want to make something every few months that I care about a lot, that's a very different thing. And you're probably not going to be able to monetize in the conventional ways unless you have a large audience, unless you have great patronage. Of course, Patreon is a whole kind of sustainable way, you know, in terms of how creators can get money from audiences. So if 100 people want to pay you $5 a month to make videos, there you go. That's something that you can keep, as well as having the other revenue in addition to it. But when you consistently upload, you also kind of make a back catalog, which makes it easier to binge your videos. And then the more that people are binging your videos, the more that YouTube recommends you, and the more that YouTube notices that you are a large channel in general, and so kind of favor your videos in the algorithm, it seems. I don't know. Generally, just more people will watch your videos, and that's good because you have more videos. That being said, you want to make at least one video that pops off. And if you're making a video per week, the goal is, as hard as it is, to make all of those videos pop off. So how do you do that? Well, you want to make sure that the topic is appealing. If you don't know what to do in terms of how to make a topic appealing, here's some things that I've noticed. For one, you have to think about who's on YouTube. A lot of the people on YouTube are, you know, very online people. What do you do when you're online all the time? What do you do when you're watching YouTube for 3 hours? Generally, you have certain vibes, certain moods, certain interests. You may be keeping up with social media gossip. So that's one thing you can think about in terms of topics. But you may also just be interested in like larger, big picture stuff. You may be interested in people doing long form deep dives about certain types of content and putting it on in the background. That's what a lot of commentary YouTube makes bank off of, is people putting videos on in the background while you knit, while you play video games, while you, I don't know, do push-ups, while you sleep, sometimes while you sleep. And so you can make the topic kind of be about anything, but you also have to think about how to frame the topic in order to make it appealing to a large audience. If you are pessimistic, people kind of like that. Like if you have a video topic that's like debunking something, you know, some people believe this thing and I'm going to debunk it. That's like a pretty solid way to get views on YouTube. If you're able to do so with really good research and make it really entertaining, that's gonna work too. And frankly, it doesn't matter, again, like what exactly the topic is, as long as it kind of channels that energy that people like, of like, wow, here's like a kind of dark story. People just love dark stories, especially on YouTube. Obviously, like there's so many creators that make like this kind of content that is like very obviously like super dark and like, you know, true crime and whatever, but it doesn't have to be that. So in the commentary and video essay realm, there's a video by Soup Emporium from 2 years ago called Why Coco Probably Couldn't Talk. Sorry, the deep dive. I didn't know who the hell Coco was. Apparently this is a gorilla that was supposed to be like talking, and this was like a whole meme, like before memes were a thing. It was a big deal in the US or in the English language world or in the world in general. And there's a few super viral videos on YouTube about Coco, but there was no like big trend talking about Coco, I don't think. When this video came out, there was no big trending topic. There was no social media wave towards it. This person didn't find the perfect time to release it in the middle of a news cycle. It wasn't something that all the other commentary YouTubers were making videos about, which there's an interesting conversation about that going on now that Noah Samson and Nick Is Not Green are having, about commentary channels kind of doing the same topic of video and kind of making the same thumbnail whenever there's some scandal in the news. In this case, this is just a person who knew about this story and had a lot of info on it and did a lot of research on it and decided to tell this story in a video essay about this belief that people have and this human interest story, this kind of wholesome story that in actuality wasn't true. And there was also a lot of dark realities beneath the surface that were pretty important to learn about, but also can be really compelling to learn about. If people can watch your video and be like, this thing tells us all about society being bad, like you're probably in a good place. Hey, I just wanted to add a quick addendum here to mention that, first of all, the pessimism and sort of debunking approach is something that I do think really works and is very popular when it comes to not just YouTube video essays, but like essays in general. I do think that there's generally an approach from audiences where they're really interested in essays being a source of kind of revealing dark truths or revealing hard truths that are important about our world. But this is definitely not the only way to get a hit video essay. And in fact, there are lots of video essays out there that are much more optimistic, much more about a person's passion about a particular work of art or media, uncovering something that people have been wanting to hear but haven't, or just generally being enthusiastic about different subjects.
And also, hi, it's me. I'm Danae, the video editor. There's another perfect counterexample in that the same channel that made the Coco video also has a different video called Yellowstone Won't Explode and End Civilization. Sorry, which is exactly what it says on the title. It's not like a super dark story, and it has more views than the Coco video.
So you don't have to feel like the only way to get YouTube views is through cheap pessimism. Even though that is a tactic that can be useful, it's definitely so much deeper than that in terms of what people actually want to watch. And even if the algorithm can be a bit cynical and a bit confusing and it can be a bit restrictive of creators' approach to videos, I don't want it to be a case where people think it's just hopeless. As a matter of fact, there's, as I said, a lot of different ways to do this. So yeah. There's a great video that came out recently that's an awesome example of how you also don't have to do that much editing at all to make a video pop off on YouTube. You can have all types of editing styles, whether you're the type of person who likes to sit in front of the camera and just talk and then barely edit it at all, if at all, or if you're the type of person that wants to make a 45-minute almost documentary style video essay. Anything can work, and anything in between can work as long as people are compelled and as long as it kind of hits those sweet spots. There was a video by A. Collier Astro called String Theory Lied to Us and Now Science Communication is Hard. It's just this person talking while playing video games and showing the screen of them playing video games the whole time. I don't think there's very many edits in the video at all, but because it's about debunking, or at least taking apart a lot of these ideas about this scientific convention, string theory, that I have no idea about. People who have no idea about it, like myself, will watch it. They're interested in like the tea. They're interested in the debunking, and they're interested in getting some insight as to how bad things happen in terms of our education, in terms of corruption in media. You know, Bobby Broccoli makes videos about science issues that have been pretty common in the news in terms of documentaries or stories being about them, and turns them into these documentaries that get millions of views on YouTube, even though nobody else is making videos about those things really in the commentary side. Because at the heart of his videos, there are stories about the lengths that humans will go to for success, humans having moral conflicts, corruption, debunking bad science, all those different things. And if you're a great storyteller, this medium is going to be really good for you if you can get a feel for it and if it can work out for you, because the best and the most successful folks in this field are folks that are really good at telling stories. And if you're not great at telling stories, I'm not great at telling stories, you can actually learn how to by kind of taking some time out to study the books that you like, the stories that are popular, learning from writers like Stephen King on Writing is a book that writers always get suggested all the time. Just kind of learn about storytelling a little bit, and that can give you guidance on like what kind of beats to hit, what kind of stories to tell, what people are most interested in when it comes to the stories, how to subvert audience expectations without being super cheesy about a twist. Anyway, debunking, humans bad, sometimes humans good, like sometimes wholesome stuff, but also just like this thing is bad. Hot takes about popular subjects, those things can work really well. That can be a good guiding place for you to talk about whatever your topic is, whether it's horses, whether it's food, whether it's some social media influencer. Now, let's talk a bit about title and thumbnail before we move on to maybe the most important thing. Title and thumbnail are really important. Really, really important. If your title and your thumbnail are not great, if they're ugly or if they're confusing, if they're too long or too weird. I mean, weird is good actually, but like if they're confusing and if they're ugly and if they're looking very derivative too, people will not click on the video. They'll be too turned off. And so that's a design conversation. That's a popular trends conversation. It's also a what appeals to the human eye conversation. But there's some general tips. Of course, people talk about the notorious yellow text on thumbnails. Yellow, red, even black, sometimes white. strong, sharp colors on thumbnails is usually a go-to, but you also want to make sure there's clarity. And you want to make sure in the thumbnail, it's such a fascinating art form, honestly, design form, whatever. You want to make sure that the thumbnail communicates exactly something that the user is interested in that is a part of your video or key to your video. If your video is about Drake, there's not necessarily a need for you to be in the thumbnail. There's not necessarily a need for there to be a bunch of different people in the thumbnail. Get the right picture of Drake on your thumbnail and it might just be enough. Especially if it's the right picture of Drake and then you have text that is clear, that is not too long, that is not obstructed, that is not ugly and hard to read, that just says something interesting. You know, picture of Drake, black background, yellow text, fell off, and that might be it, right? And that's like a very crude example, but those are like some general things that people do with thumbnails. But the most important thing is like, don't focus on your thumbnail being gorgeous. If the thumbnail is gorgeous and it works, then that's great. But if the thumbnail is gorgeous, but only in a certain way where it's nice to look at and not necessarily interesting to click on, then it's just not really going to work. You can't be too precious about thumbnails. You have to be willing to experiment with them. Same thing with titles, which we'll get into. But you have to make sure that the thumbnail is communicating something. The thumbnail has to have a clarity to it, with not only with the text, but in terms of like what's on the image of the thumbnail. What does the text say? Does the text say some words that are too big or too weird? Does it make sense? Does it feel like the type of video that's been made a bunch of times before when you look at the thumbnail? Does it look like it's going to spark a conversation? Like, are you looking for hate clicks? I just realized my pen is under my laptop. That's not necessarily the worst way to think about thumbnails, is thinking about hate clicks, right? I mean, not necessarily hate clicks in terms of I want people to hate my video, but like thinking about what kind of thumbnails the person that you're criticizing would dislike. That can sometimes be a motivating factor for how you do your thumbnails. Just images that draw some sort of reaction, which is very general and very whatever. But I think it's just really important to take time, even sometimes before you make the video, to think about what are people going to see first? What is the thumbnail going to be? Because that could be, again, make or break. Same thing with titles. Titles you can experiment with and change all the time. You don't want your titles to be hard to read. You want your titles to ideally be under 65 characters or so, because that way it won't get like cut off when it's on the recommendations page. You also can kind of experiment with different types of capitalization. If you're a kind of chill vibe with your channel, you can do lowercase titles. If you want to do regular capitalization like I do, then that's fine too. It doesn't really matter. What matters more is like, how does it fit with the vibe of your video? So if your video is, again, like super chill, just you chatting, sometimes that lowercase title will just hit. It just, people will just love it. Whereas if you have that kind of standard capitalization, that might be better set up for a video that is kind of sharply edited, that feels kind of more like a documentary or an episode of a documentary show or journalistic thing. So those are the things to consider with that. All caps probably don't do. I don't see all caps get any success anymore. Sometimes if it's like part of the title, then that's one thing. I see sometimes all caps works with like the short videos that go viral, but those aren't the kind of things that you want to do in terms of like clips from movies or whatever, because those are memes. This is a different realm. Also, I think titles can work really well if you're stumped on them when you make them a statement. So if you're making a video about how Colleen Ballinger has been doing bad things for a long time and you're investigating something that she did in 2016, maybe be like the dark side of Colleen Ballinger, but that's just like too generic, right? Because everybody's kind of doing that. And that's not telling you so much about the specific thing that you're covering. Whereas if you make a title that's like the beginning of Colleen Ballinger's fall from grace. Colleen Ballinger, no, not what she did this because that's too clickbaity. Colleen Ballinger's book, is bad. Like statements. Colleen Ballinger did, I don't know shit about this person. This is the worst Colleen Ballinger video. That's a great YouTube title. Somebody's gonna look at that and then you have a thumbnail from it where she's doing something weird. Boom, you're set up for, and you can even put yourself in it, yellow text, boom. Statements, okay? Another thing that's really important, audio. If you're trying to retain the audience to watching your video, I cannot stress enough that it is very important that you don't have bad audio. And there's a few rules that are pretty simple that you can adhere to do that. One is just where you're recording, especially if you don't have a nice microphone. As long as you're in an insulated room where there's not much outside noise coming in and there's not that much echo in the room, you can literally just put your phone on, film with your phone, and record the audio that comes out. and probably be fine. Like, as long as there's not so much echo or a noise from the background, that's good. If you are too close to the microphone but popping all over the place, nobody likes that. Nobody wants to hear that. It's uncomfortable to hear. Make it go away. You also want to keep training at being clear with what you say and at having a calming voice. Some people like different tones of voices, and you'll find the audience that works for you. But I think the most successful thing and probably the best thing is to have a voice that is not overly loud. That sounds kind of weird. There's a feeling people get when they watch a video and it feels like the person's yelling at them. It doesn't feel great. If you have a nice lower tone of voice, if you open your mouth fully while talking so that you enunciate the syllables well, that can work well. Even if you have a speech impediment or you have an accent, those things can be looked past as long as you're willing to do the compensatory work to make sure that the words come out as clearly as possible. People will listen. Like, people sometimes will really like a voice that sounds different, that sounds unconventional or whatever. It just has to be something that they understand. If they feel like that you're dragging your words all over the place, it might not be as successful. So that's good, that's important. But maybe the most important thing is the vibe, especially if you're doing commentary videos. People want to watch videos from people that they think are likable. So that's something you kind of have to work out with your maker, with God. It's hard, it's not a science, but it just comes down to like social skills generally, like understanding what people laugh at, understanding like what people see in you and how to reflect that to them in the most positive way, what your best qualities are, what the things are that you are comfortable with, the things that you enjoy doing on camera. The more that you look like you're trying to be something that you're not, the less people will want to watch. That's a very difficult thing to get past or to even understand. But I think it just comes down to how comfortable are you with yourself? How comfortable are you with your audience and like what you want to communicate with them? And generally like how much you're willing to sort of be a bit social when you make the video. Now, if you're doing a video essay, it's a bit different. It's a bit more audiobooky. It's a bit more podcasty. It's a bit more about reading text. And that's a whole conversation for another day. I don't like my video essay voice sometimes. I'm working on it. But yeah, the vibe of your channel is going to influence what you do with your titles and your thumbnails, whether it's uppercase or lowercase, the colors you use in your thumbnails, whether you're in the thumbnails or not. Those are things to think about. And those are things to experiment with. But the best thing to do is to know yourself, and that's the hardest thing to do. But things are easier when you know yourself. They're much harder when you don't, and it's really hard to know yourself. Okay, let's hit some miscellaneous things before we go. Again, this is not like a perfect, like, this is how you succeed on YouTube. I don't think that anybody should ever act like they know exactly the key to being successful on YouTube. It's not like that. It's just about trying, going by certain tips, and it's actually kind of an attrition thing. It might not work out the first month, it might not work out the first year, but if you keep doing it and you keep experimenting and trying things when other things don't work, and you notice the things that do seem to work or do seem to attract people a bit more, that do seem to hit better with your friends if they're the only people that you can get to watch, or with the algorithm when you get a video that gets 2,000 views and normally you get 500, and take note of those things, think about them for a while. Think about what it was that caused those views to get to your channel. Were you just reacting to something that was popular at the time and got those react views that happen for like 48 hours and go away generally? Was it that you talked about a topic that is generally kind of popular all the time on YouTube? Do a lot of market research. Just constantly be looking around, seeing what's getting views, what's not getting views. It doesn't have to be a super intensive thing, but it does have to be something you pay attention to, because if this is going to be your job, which again, there's no guarantee that this can be the best job for you, and many people don't want to make this their job for good reasons, and people who do are generally pretty privileged, like myself. But if you're going to make this your job, it is then your job to study what's happening. Study what is working at the job, what is working on the algorithm, etc., etc. Sometimes putting in the info for being a partner is wonky, so there's that. There's a lot of great conversations about how algorithms tend to favor white people and white passing people, and so I'll have some recommendations for things you can check out on screen that can talk about those things. Those are things to keep in mind too, but generally there's a way that you can make this work. I don't want you to be super discouraged. I also don't want you to think that this is some perfect track to success. It's just sometimes you need a job. Sometimes you need a little income, And if you have a few essays in you and you think you can maybe finagle it to look good on the algorithm, there's no shame in that. I think a lot of people like to shame people for wanting money out of YouTube, and I don't really get it, because you wouldn't shame your waiter for wanting to be tipped. Well, a lot of people actually do that. You wouldn't shame people at the marketplace for wanting money for an item. I guess people do that too. People need money, okay? We can all be anti-capitalist as much as we want. We can all understand the problems with our system, but we also need money. And that means we have to make certain choices and compromises and live with them. And we don't have to be completely immoral. We don't have to lie in our videos. We don't have to clickbait all the get out for our videos. We can do a pretty good job making nice videos and make money off of it, and that can be our job, okay? It's not all that different from what people have been doing in media for years and years and years. And I think especially if you're somebody who is concerned about the exploitation that can take place when it comes to wage labor and when it comes to freelance work and all this stuff, I don't want you to get too discouraged about that. If this is the career path for you, you can find a way to make it work. There's actually a really good video by Ugopnik about making money under capitalism and stuff like that. I recommend that too. And I also want you to know, like, you might think this can't be me, I can't do this, but if you want to do it and you have a couple ideas, then try it. The worst that can happen is that you made a video that was kind of cool, or you kind of liked it, or you kind of didn't like it, didn't work out, or whatever. Or sometimes you can get really bullied really badly too. Try and reach out for help, and it could work for you. It's not for everybody, but there's a lot of jobs that aren't for everybody. And there's a lot of jobs that really suck. And I think with all things considered, this one isn't that bad, especially for me. So maybe for you, maybe that could be the same thing. If you have questions, let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.